So first of all, I want to say thank you to Craig, Martelle, and Michael Anderle for inviting me for the third time to come to 20 Books to 50K and present. I am so grateful and honored, and I'm also a little bit touched, that it's going to be Craig's swan song, his last conference. I'm sure we'll still, hopefully, knock on wood, see him around at the conferences, but it will definitely feel different without him here, so I'm very grateful. So I'll start to run through this. I have to tell you something. So there's been a little bit of a kerfluffle caused by myself. I was trained 3 years ago by the AV crew here to never leave home without a dongle. Now the word dongle has a really special meaning to me as a romance author. So every time I say dongle, it feels like I'm saying something really nasty or dirty or something, right? I'm a 14-year-old boy. So unfortunately, I got all the way to Vegas without my dongle. So I've had to Facebook message a lot of people, but thankfully the AV team was here to take care of me. So it's Vegas, baby, as he always says. So what happens every year is that Craig invites me to speak, and then he, 3 months before the conference, will put down what I'm speaking on, right? So the great thing is that it has caused me to create all kinds of new material based on what he believes the need is in the author community. So I've spoken on books to film, I've spoken on author business, I've spoken on legal pitfalls. This year it's the Allure of Hollywood and the Pitfalls. So this is a new presentation. I am an attorney, so this is my disclaimer, right? I have to put this up here because, legal advice, I'm not giving you legal advice. If I am your attorney, if you're in this audience, I am not giving you specifically advice by standing up here and talking to you. This is just like an overall sort of presentation about this. So who am I and why the heck am I here speaking to all of you? So I too am an author. Like I said, I write romance and women's fiction. My first book was Trad Pubbed. It was an auction with Random House and Atria, sold in 2007. It came out during the financial crisis. I can tell you it didn't do so great, so I was immediately thrown into book jail. That being said, I'm also a former motion picture literary agent. I already was an attorney. I went to Hollywood 21 years ago, LA 21 years ago, and I worked my way up through the mailroom. It is actually true. The day I walked into the mailroom, there were 7 of us. 4 of us were attorneys, and 1 had a PhD, and we were all pushing mail carts for minimum wage so that we could become agents. So it is true, all the things, and I had already practiced. That being said, once my book sold, I walked away from agenting, thought I would be a full-time writer. Here's the thing. If your writer friends figure out that you have other skill sets, sometimes they ask you to do them. So what happened was that all of my clients from when I was an agent would still ask me to read their screenplays, they would ask me to look at their agreements, and I would do so. And then when my writer friends figured out that I understood film and TV, and that I also understood publishing, they would ask me to look at their deal memos, tell them if these producers were legitimate, maybe try to take their projects out. So it was my husband who said to me, look, if you are doing contracts and talking to people 5 hours a day, and you're only writing 2 hours a day, you have a law firm. When are you going to realize you have a law firm? So that was about 4 years in, and now the law firm is 11 years old. We now have 2 assistants, 2 associates, and we just keep kind of building off that success. So that's who I am. This is the book that I was talking about, Books to Film and TV. I wrote it because what happened is that, friends would call me up and ask me about information about how do things move from a book into a film or a TV show. And I love to talk about that stuff. So I'd be on the phone for like an hour and I'd just tell them everything I know. I would get like the Energizer Bunny. See what happens? I sort of talk really fast because I'm excited. But then they would tell their friends, and their friends would call, and I would do the same thing. And then the friends of the friends would call, and I would do the same thing. And then all of a sudden, I'd have piles of client work. So I figured out kind of late into the game that I can't just give this all the time, every time somebody calls. So it was my great friend, Theodora Taylor, and I can say client because she said it publicly, my great friend and client, Theodora Taylor, who was like, just dump it in a book. You're a writer, dump it in a book. So that's what we did. So that kind of gives you an overview. And I realized there wasn't any sort of resource like that out in the marketplace. And I don't know about you, but myself and most of the authors that I know, we read a lot of stuff, right? Like if we don't know how to do something, we're going to figure it out. We're going to read something to try to figure it out. So, all right. So like I said, I haven't given this presentation before. So if questions pop up in your mind as we're walking through this, if you would please just raise your hand, let me know. I'm happy to pause as we go along because this is a first for me too. So I have worked with all of these studios, right? Studios and streamers. We need to update our slide because as you know, HBO is no longer HBO Max, it's just Max, and instead of having like, you know, Sex and the City on the landing page, it has Dr. Pimple Popper, which is a big change, right? And there's some that aren't even on here that we've worked with as well. So both as when I was an agent and then now also moving projects into the books and books into the film and TV space. So let's talk a little bit about the Allure stuff first. Oh, well, this, I think, I always love this because, you know, we all know this. All the best film and TV shows come from books. And this, you know, there's tons of them, so many. And then me being a romance author, I have to put up some of those as well, you know. And as you guys know, you guys might be starting to see it reflected in your streaming. We're still in a strike, you know, although I'm going to predict before the end of this week, maybe even by tomorrow. We'll see. Deadline is reporting good news as far as SAG-AFTRA, so that would be great. So, the allure of Hollywood. The allure of Hollywood is obviously the big bucks, right? Although I can tell you after doing hundreds of deals, sometimes those bucks are maybe not quite as big as you would want them to be. It really kind of depends on all kinds of elements that go with the project as it moves through development, as well as the appetite for the studio streamer for your particular project or book, right? So, but one of the things that I want to talk about is that one of the questions I get asked a lot is how does Hollywood find the books that they turn into the film and TV space? And after years of it, this is what I've kind of boiled it down to. Organic discovery, the submission process, and the outlier event. Now, in my books to film presentation and in the book, I spend a lot of time running through each of these, and I'm gonna kind of just give you a little bit of an overview so we can all be working from the same vocabulary, right? So organic discovery, producers and studios have hundreds of people that they employ to look for new material, right? They're called development executives. And if they're really good at their job, they become VPs, right? So they are constantly looking for things. And they're also, like us, you know how we ask people to tell us what's a great book to read? They do the same thing. They talk to their friends, they talk to their parents, they talk to, you know, anyone that they can. What are you reading? And they also do the same thing that, I mean, I don't know if you do, but I do, is that I will look sometimes on Amazon and I'll be like, okay, so what are the best-selling books in this subgenre that I'm interested in reading right now? What is really hot? And then they also look at the lists, right? They look at the Times, although I hear Wall Street Journal is gonna be no more. I think they're getting rid of it. A friend of mine told me that today. They do look at the Times list. The USA Today bestseller list, I think, is back, right? They've restarted that. So they look at lists like that. And then there are some places where they will, and I talk about this a little bit later, they will look to see first if the rights are available. Because development executives have to read a lot of materials. Not only are they looking for materials, but they're also reading the screenplays that are currently in development. And the screenplays that are currently in development, a screenplay writer will turn in a draft, and then the executive will have to read it, give them notes, and send it back. So they're not just looking for material, they're also working on the materials that are in development. But organic discovery is when an executive or development executive finds your material on their own. Submission, that's what agents, literary managers, entertainment attorneys do. We take material and we submit them to producers or studios that we have relationships with that we know or think they want that type of material, right? Spend a lot of time talking to people that I've known now for 20 years about what they're looking for their slate. And in fact, yeah, all the time. So the outlier event. This one, I always joke about how it's the sexiest one. It is super sexy, especially to us storytellers. This is the one where, and I've used this example before, Issa Rae's aunt just happens to be your best friend's sorority sister. And they give Issa your book, and she loves your book. She loves your book, and she has got to make your book, right? Or you happen to be at Lake Como getting, I don't know, a bottle of wine and you bump into George Clooney and he says, "What do you do? You're an American, I can hear your accent." And you say, "I'm an author." And he says, "What do you write?" And you slip him your book and he wants to make it. So those are the outlier events. And of course, all of us as storytellers can understand why we find those so sexy, because they're the fabulous story, right? They're the thing that we all think is absolutely amazing. They do happen. That's not how mostly it happens, but they do happen. So I would assert that usually it's the organic discovery or the submission that is going to get a book into the right hands as far as getting an option, getting it developed, and then getting something on screen. The outlier event, though, is really fun to talk about and to participate in. Okay, what else? So I'm going to walk through the process. If you have questions, just, raise your hand. So the next thing is so once somebody is interested in your book, like I said, a development executive will reach out, try to find out if the film and TV rights are available. Because they're so busy, if the film and TV rights are already under option, they're probably not going to read it. So they're going to reach out to you by email, and they're going to say, "Are the film and TV rights available?" And you are going to say yes, if they are, or no, or you might even say, "Who the heck is this? I know it's got to be a scam." Which is oftentimes when people I know will email me, and I've got an example of one that actually is a scam. They'll email me and be like, "Is this person for real?" And I'll say, "Yes, they actually are for real. Just let them know if they're available or not," right? One of the tips that I hear is a good tip, and I'm sure you guys might have heard it by now, but I'll go ahead and repeat it because I love it. So there are hundreds of books out there, and if an executive can't readily contact you or your rep to find out if the film and TV rights are available, that book that is like right beneath yours on Amazon, they may go to that, right? So anywhere you have your name, because they'll do a website check. Like if it looks interesting, they'll search you up on Google, Facebook, Instagram, any place like that. Put for film and TV rights inquiries and an email address that you will monitor. But also be prepared to get scammy emails there, so maybe not give them don't put your personal email, put something else. But then monitor it, because that is still how executives reach out to people, especially with independent authors, because independent authors oftentimes don't have an agent, right? It used to be they would go to their agent, or they would go to their trad editor, or they'd do something like that. So that's a great way. So get a shopping agreement. Let's just make the numbers fabulous, right? So let's say that your first 6-month option is meant to be for $50,000, and then you have an extension period of another 6 months for $75,000. These numbers are really high, by the way. So and then if they make it, they're going to pay you $1 million, right? Let's just say that, because that makes everyone happy. So what will happen sometimes is that it will be either the producer or the studio streamer that is optioning your material. 85 to 90%, it is the production company that is optioning your material. They may have a first look or an overall deal with a studio or streamer, which means that the studio or streamer will pay that option, or they're looking to that producer to really develop materials for that studio or streamer, which is a great thing. But so if the producer options it, now they've got a book. Well, a book isn't a TV show, right? A book isn't a TV show, so they've got to take that book and they've got to develop it. So that means that they're going to, if they want to make it an episodic TV show, they're going to attach a showrunner. If they think that they're going to make it, when I say film, I mean anything 90 minutes anymore, because some people, theaters, some people know, right? So if they're going to make it into a film, or they think it will be like an episodic film, or a movie wheel, meaning it's going to be more than one film, a movie wheel, then they can attach a screenplay writer or a director. TV shows may or may not attach a piece of talent. It has to be a really high level of talent. Like there's 5 names that are both men. I mean, there are 5 men and 5 women that can get things going anytime, anywhere. And it really has a lot to do with their recognition and their box office. Sales win. Sales always win. So box office sales. Book sales are a little bit different. It's like it doesn't translate sometimes. So they have optioned your material, and they're going to come up with a take. What that means is that either the showrunner, when it's in TV, or the screenplay writer, when it's in film, is going to come up with their take on your book. And then they may or may not create a pitch deck that they're then going to take out to the different studios and streamers. So this is the allure. I know it sounds like a whole lot of work, but it truly is part of the allure. It's the money, it's the idea of being in the show, like not in the show, but at the game, right? Because I can tell you that one of the things I've seen with a lot of my clients is that when a book does make it to screen, oftentimes it helps with their sales of their books, right? It acts almost as though it's a walking advertisement for that book or that book series. And then there are some authors that, and I think independent authors are particularly adept at social media and marketing and all of those things, which it can leverage the show being on and sell even more books and make a greater name for themselves. I think Debbie McComber has been really good at that. I feel like Danielle Steele is really good at that. Stephen King, obviously. And then, why am I blanking on his name? We all know him. Neil Gaiman, but he now is a showrunner, right? That's the other thing, is that if you as a book author have always wanted to be a screenplay writer or a showrunner, when your book gets optioned, probably you're not going to make that part of your immediate deal, but you oftentimes can get the opportunity to write perhaps an episode in the second season. George R.R. Martin is a perfect example of that. He was out there writing in TV, got tired of it, said go kick rocks, and then wrote his books. In fact, my mentor walked with those books for years, and we could not get them set up. And one of the challenges was, this was before streaming, and so those books, and this was also before Lord of the Rings, when we were walking with them, I think that's right, and nobody could figure out how to make one of his books into a movie because it was so densely packed. And on top of that, there was not yet the CGI that was necessary to make a really good movie. So it was a perfect sort of storm that his books were discovered by those showrunners in that moment, when you had the CGI capability that was developed by Weta Studios, right, combined with the desire to stream episodic things to try to get people to jump onto that streaming platform. So that was perfect timing. So back to my pitch deck examples. So one of the things that they're going to do is they're going to come up with an idea, right? So this pitch deck is still one of my most favorite pitch decks, and it went out as Montauk, right? The Duffer Brothers, who went to Chapman. I think. Oh no. Let me see if I can get I'm going to see if I can link to my phone, because I think that we have the ability to drill into that pitch deck, maybe. I'm going to hope. I'm going to fingers crossed. We'll see. Maybe I'll go back to it. Oh. Maybe not. Oh, there it is. Yeah, look at that. Oh, technology is great when it works. Not always great for me, but. Okay. So one of the things that they did was, they had an idea and they went to Sean Levy, and the Duffer Brothers didn't have a lot of credits. See what happened there is, and this is what happens sometimes, is that you have to have an idea, and oftentimes you have to go to a heavy hitter, such as a Sean Levy, who had 21 Laps, who bought into this with these guys. And so then they came up with this, which is a pitch deck. And it kind of goes over, and you see that's not from them, right? A pitch deck oftentimes, or a sizzle reel, they're ripped from other things. And the reason they can rip them from other things is because of the fact that you're not, well, technically they probably shouldn't, but they can, because they're not monetizing it. They're not selling it, meaning they're not selling the pitch deck, right? So, and they did the whole thing as though this was like a paperback novel. They made it look very Stephen King. I can tell you that there are times when producers will work with authors to come up with the pitch decks for projects, and I have a couple of those. I think I'll show them. And one of the challenges with that is that movie and TV people are visual people. Book people, we're word people. So when I get a pitch deck from an author for their book, I will look at it, and I would say probably 99% of the time, I will say, this is amazing. I love words. I'm a book person first and a film and TV person second. And I will say, but you need to go back and you need to take out 75% of the words, and then with all that blank space, add a whole bunch of pictures, right? Because, this is what movie people do. And then they do this, and then they look at the picture. You know what I mean? That's what they do. So, but and you notice that the aesthetic is all the same, right? Oh my God, look at all those open things at the bottom. Okay, so yeah. So this is one of my favorites, and it's been passed around town a lot because, see, look, it looks like paper. Can you see where it looks like it has creased paper? And the other thing is that a lot of the executives who are starting to be able to say yes to things are like Gen X or like me. So they loved that era. So this really spoke to that for them. But yeah, so they pulled that from Hellraiser. But they're giving an idea. Oh, one of our favorites, right? Stand By Me, one of our favorites. They're doing all the feels in this pitch deck, right? It is not. No, but I mean, I'm happy to send it. Yeah, I can do that. I don't think that's a problem. I don't know. To be quite honest, I shouldn't say no just that quickly because I don't know. I know that things like this get passed around internally a lot. So, oh, look at that 80s aesthetic. Yep. Oh, there we go. Some of our favorites. Is that Jaws? Yeah, Jaws. Mm-hmm. So yeah, so this is a great example. Let me get my thing opened back up. There. That's a great example of a pitch deck and what we do with a pitch deck. This is a series that we're out with. It's by Marie Force. She sold millions of copies, and it's a very sort of soapy family saga series. And so we've got a pitch deck there, and we've gone back and forth. And then this is Claire Cook, who is the author of Must Love Dogs. So. And this is another series that she has, and we're out with that as well. So tools. So one of the things that I want to advocate is that this is meant to be the pitfalls as well as the allure, right? So the allure is the money. The allure is the glamour. The allure is this idea of, oh my God, seeing my words on screen, which is really quite fantastic. I mean, we always try when we negotiate for our authors to make sure that they get a set visit, because there is nothing, I think, better as an author to see what you have created on a page seeing people actually act it out, right? That's amazing. I can say that these tools can help you try to determine if somebody reaches out to you, if they're legitimate or not, right? It can also help you to better understand my industry, right? So we all read Deadline, we all read Variety. Lucky for us, they're digital, except Variety, I think, has a once a week, still comes out in paper once a week. IMDb has a free version, it's IMDb. I would say that if somebody reaches out to you about your material, if they just are asking you about rights, say they're saying, are the rights available? Respond, yes or no, they are. If they reach out to you and they say, we're really interested in your material, we need you to pay us money, or we need you to do X, Y, or Z, or we need you to do whatever it is, press pause. I'm going to go through that a little bit. That's not how it works, right? It's not how it works in my industry. You're the authors. Money is meant to flow towards you. I mean, unless you're, and I do have some clients who are big independent authors who have decided they kind of want to take things into their own hands, so they are acting more as producers, right? And they are hiring screenplay writers, they're going to hire a director, they're actually going to do this. That's different. But if somebody comes at you and says, I've seen this several times, if somebody comes at you and says, I'll do an adaptation of your your adaptation of your book for $5,000, right? And then I have a friend and we're going to be able to set it up. Just say no. Or reach out to someone who you know within the industry, right? I may not be the only person that you know that works in the film and TV industry. And vet this individual. Try to figure out, is this person real, or is this person trying to scam money from me? Because it is a long-standing sort of rule in the film and TV space, is that money flows towards the intellectual property creator, not away from them. Unless you want to be a producer, right? That's different. So yeah, but these are places where you can get online and you can kind of look up somebody who reaches out to you. I mean, I use Variety Insight nearly every day. It will also show you the different executives in town, where they are, although it's not always up to date. There's a little bit of lag time sometimes. You're always welcome to reach out to me, and I will be happy to tell you if I know them or I don't. After 20 years, it's a small community. There are 10,000 working professionals, meaning executives, business affairs, attorneys, that work in my industry, only 10,000. And at this point, if I don't know someone, I know someone who knows them, right? So I'm happy to be of service that way. Okay, so your book has been optioned, now what? Development. You've heard me say this word a couple of times. So studio, third-party financier, writer, producer, showrunner, director. So the studio is the person who is the entity that writes the check, unless you have a third-party financier. A third-party financier can be an equity participant, somebody who has a lot of money who says, oh my golly, I've always loved this book. I'm a billionaire. I'm going to make it, right? Director, showrunner, we've already talked about, producer, and writer. So one of the challenges that I have when I speak to people is that they're like, how do I get there? Just how do I do it? Maggie, just tell me how to do it. The problem is that there are like 90 paths up the same mountain. And I use that analogy or metaphor, whichever it is, a lot, because I cannot tell you the one way that you are going to get your book into production. I can tell you a variation of kind of the way that usually works. And that's because, let me give you an example. So your book gets optioned by a producer. The producer says, okay, so I think that we should go to Amazon, Apple, Netflix, Sony, and Max with this project. And you say, okay, great. And the producer says, I'm really good friends with these 5 showrunners. I'm going to send them the book. So the producer sends the book to either the showrunners directly or their agents or managers. The showrunners then read the book, and then they either say yes, no, or maybe. If it's a no, then you are done with them. If it's a yes, then they have a conversation with the producer, and maybe you even, depending on the type of deal that you manage to strike, and they pitch their idea of how to set up this book. Right? And then the producer, best case scenario, the producer gets to select one of these showrunners, and then they develop perhaps a pitch deck with that showrunner, or they definitely develop a pitch, and then they take it into all those buyers. Another way it happens, back to Issa Rae. Issa Rae is not only a showrunner, but she is a well-recognized star. She is absolutely incredible. She wants to do your book. She doesn't need anybody. She can, as a showrunner, she can kind of come up with a take. She can walk it straight in. She has a first look deal with Max, I think, right now. Walk it straight in and say, I want to do this. I want to star in it. I want to be the showrunner on it. Let's do it. And if Max thinks it's going to fit their slate, but I can tell you, they're incentivized to work with her because they pay her lots of money for her overall deal. So when somebody gets an overall deal, they're looking for that entity or individual to provide content to the studio or streamer. So that's one of the pitfalls, I think, is that it can feel like there's all these moving pieces that kind of have to line up for something to actually happen. And all the time this is happening, you've also got people like me or business affairs who are doing contracts. And I got to tell you, the contracts, they take forever. We try not to be the one that is like lagging. I try really hard to turn it around quickly. But I can tell you that in my world, anything that is 10 to 14 days is quick. And I think that's frustrating to independent authors because you know what? You can change your covers like that, right? You can say, I need new covers, and you can have new covers up in 24 hours. So I know it can be frustrating when you're like, no, it's moving quickly. It's been 3 months. I promise you it's moving quickly. So this is important to me because one of the challenges that I see, and this kind of goes with the whole idea of quick, and it also goes with the whole pitfall and kind of the allure as well. It's all of it. So you have a book. You as an author have created this incredible vision of this world or these characters, all of it. And you sit most likely alone or with, silencing headphones, if you have kids, somewhere, and you create this world in this book. That book has to support you and the costs of your life, right? So when it becomes either a movie or a TV show, it's going to be going from one person to hundreds, perhaps thousands of people working on it, right? Literally, hundreds or thousands of people working on it. So what is happening is that somebody's going to cross over that bridge with you, and it's going to be a producer, a showrunner, a screenplay writer. So they're taking that one thing that really makes a lot of sense in book form, and I know oftentimes authors will say, I don't want any changes to my book. I want my book. This is my book. My book is, is great. I really don't think there should be any changes. And I will use this one. I will say, yes, but you're taking a book, which, you guys know that only that once people leave high school, 3 out of 4 people never read a book again. It's horrifying. It's horrifying. It's horrifying. 3 out of 4 people don't read a book again. So even our biggest best sellers, some of them are at this conference, think about how few people are actually, in the general population, are actually reading their book, right? So you have to take a piece of intellectual property that is appealing to that small group. How many people watch TV, right? In high school, after high school, I would assert that it's probably less than 1 out of 4 people that never watch TV or watch a movie ever in their lives. It's like a small infinitesimal amount. So they're going to take this book that is a huge bestseller maybe, but they've got to take it and they've got to make sure that it is appealing to a market that is huge in comparison and that can sustain and support all these people working on this material. And book, we've all seen the numbers. It depends. If you're bootstrapping, you could possibly get a book up if you do your own cover for not much money at all, right? Like in theory, it could just be your time and you do your own cover and it's nothing. Not the same, right? You're talking about a per episode fee of a TV show of, 2, 3, 5, 10, 15, $20 million. So this piece of intellectual property has to support the budget. And then if you're talking about movies, you're talking about 25, 50, 75, depending on the movie. So there are all these people that are going to help you take your piece of intellectual property and move it into this other space. And there's going to be a lot of cooks in that kitchen. And I have yet to do a deal in which an author gets final cut and gets to make the decisions. Because if the studio's writing the check for $10 million an episode, they're probably not going to let you control it. Now, that being said, you notice I didn't say, I will never say never because the town is crazy and you never know what was going to happen. Stephen King, Neil Gaiman, there are a few others. They have more control and they will be able to get more control, but it's leverage. We all know what leverage is, right? So, right. So when a client says, I just don't see any changes, I will try it very gently, but I will say, and I'm not being facetious or coy or any of that, I'll be like, then maybe film and TV isn't the right space for you. Truly, I am a book lover first, and I have complete respect for what authors do, and I think that, look, Dr. Seuss, none of his books got really changed until and then his family was like, so, you see that with some authors will say, no, I'm just not going to do it. And I have complete respect for that. And that totally makes sense. And I think it's up to every author. But that is the allure and the pitfall, the changes, the amount of people that are going to have control over the material, the fact that it will not be yours, the fact that you may even have readers who are not very happy with some of those changes that take place. We've all seen the adaptations of our favorite books, and they maybe don't work out the way we would have liked. But keep in mind, you're also taking your favorite book and you have to make it, just because it fits on the screenplay of your mind, doesn't mean that it necessarily fits as a screenplay on screen, So, okay. Development can take a long time. It can take so long. It can go really fast or it can take forever. And by forever, it could be 20 years, right? I remember when I was agenting, we had a client, his book, he made a living off of his books being optioned, and they never got made. I mean, a substantial 6-figure living, because people loved his books and they would continually get optioned, but nobody could seem to get them made. And that's another frustrating thing for indie authors. They're like, why can't you get it made? Well, it has to be the right director at the right time, or the studio has to have a spot in their slate that they really think, or they think that the market or the viewers are really going to watch this. All of those things kind of have to come together. So, okay, beware of the scammers. Okay, so I wanted to get to this. This was really important to me because I see these emails. I get them from friends. Okay, as I said before, money flows to the author, right? Unless somebody's doing a service for you, a specific service that you need done, money flows to the author. Okay, so I don't know if you can see this, but so this was sent to a friend of mine, a dear friend of mine, and she said, is this a scam? So I want to point out some of the things. At first, I was like, I don't know if it is a scam, right? Because I was like, huh, okay. And then I looked, and then I started reading it, and I was like, oh. So I want you to take a look at the email. So this scammer's really smart because there is no Columbia Pictures anymore. It's Sony. Sony bought Columbia Pictures, but almost all of us can remember Columbia, right? And in fact, you can even remember the little lady standing there with her thing. Well, that's Sony now. It took me a minute. Like I was like, I don't know who this person is, and I've never seen anything like this. Okay, so I send my warmest regards, hoping that the message reaches you in the peak of vitality. Okay, so now at this point, you're kind of like, okay, yeah, right. AI, I don't know. AI could be somewhere out of maybe not a native English language speaker. I don't know. So then I kept reading. Unleash your book's potential. Brace yourself for some exciting news. Our extensive market research has unveiled an insatiable hunger for content. And of course, every author wants this to be true. Right? Like this is the type of email that you get where they have to have your book. So now here's the next thing. Sanford Panitch. Sanford Panitch is a real executive at Sony. Right. So because I was like, wait, I know, and I know it's not from Sex and the City. I know this name, right? So it's a real executive from Sony, but do you see how Sony is Columbia now? See how clever these people have become? And they use Culver City is where the lot is for Sony, right? So all of this, it feels very like, it feels very kind of like, oh, until you drill down into it. There was another one that I got, which was not me, but a client got, where they were like, we've done all of these things, and we just want to do an adaptation for your book into a screenplay. We just need $5,000, right? Don't do that. Don't do that. Forward the email to me, and I'm happy to take a look at it and be like, I had that happen. There was someone, I've never met this person in real life, but she's like, I heard that you understand this world. She sent it to me. Well, first of all, I can tell you, I reached out to this email address and said, I represent this person. I'm really excited to hear what you have to say. And then it has like, Maggie Marr Legal, and I'd sign it Maggie Marr Esquire, So I have not gotten a response. So that's how I tend to do it, And if it's something that's really on the fence, like I did have this, there is sort of this newish endeavor, which I'm conflicted about. So it's kind of like they're somewhat legitimate, but I'm not sure how legitimate. And so they will work with authors to try to bring the things to screen, but not in the traditional sense. I mean, the traditional sense is that usually producers don't charge you, right? They don't charge authors. They're supposed to be paying you. Now, some of them will engage in like a shopping agreement or an attachment agreement, and I defer to my clients on that, especially if it's a book that's not getting any action at the time, and it's a producer who is either going to put forth some sweat equity, or maybe a producer who just struck out on their own, and you love them, they love you, you think they have hustle, and you're like, I'm going to give them 6 months to give it a try. Nobody's coming for this book anyway. I would just say, just paper that. Just make sure you put some sort of little tiny agreement in place so that they don't get their hooks into your IP in any sort of way. That's the other thing. So yes, a question. Yes, what is it? Tell me. What is the inquiry like? I'd love to see it if you want to send it to me. Yeah. And then I can tell you, because things pop up. I don't know everybody, and I don't know everything, and I'm the first one to say it. But I can tell you that if I don't know them, I can find out somebody who does know them. Okay, so do your research and your due diligence. Oh, the IP thing. That's the thing, is that I don't ever want somebody to get their hooks into your intellectual property. I sometimes get the downside of that. Don't ever sign anything unless you have somebody smart, somebody who understands entertainment, read it. It doesn't have to be me, but have somebody. And a real estate attorney, unless they worked for Warner Brothers 10 years ago, will not work. Yeah.
2 things. Number one, I want to tell you that I got that exact same email from Lionsgate instead of Columbia.
There you go. They're making the rounds.
The other thing I was going to ask about is I've heard that handshake deals are still the way business is done.
So, but here's the difference. If I went through the mailroom with you and you run a studio, then I know who you are. So when I say that there's only 10,000 people in town, there are still, look, I worked at one of the biggest, I worked at ICM, which now is part of CAA. It was arguably the third largest agency in the world. We had clients who made hundreds of millions of dollars that never signed a representation agreement, but they still paid their agents, right? So there is that sometimes. And then, you know, there are times when I will have clients or people who have worked with a producer over and over and over again, and they may firm up I just got this today. They'll firm up the terms on their own, and then they'll send it over to business affairs. So business affairs, which is me, business affairs lags sometimes. The question was, handshake deals still happen. They do, but the challenge becomes is that when you get into the space where you're actually cutting checks or you're actually going to distribute material, studios and streamers have armies of people like me who want to make sure that the chain of title is good. So if the deal hasn't been papered originally, they're gonna ask you to paper something. And by paper, I mean write an agreement, sign a document.
I was more worried about the other direction. If you're chatting with somebody, can you accidentally obligate yourself?
I mean, I guess look, no. I would just say no, because if they send you a check and you cash it, then maybe, right? Like but if they say, can I walk with your project for 3 months? If you say yes and never paper it, maybe they can walk with your project for 3 months, but there's no terms that have been agreed to, right? Like there's nothing. And I would assert that you would say to them, if they say, I would like to walk with your project, I want a shopping agreement, then you say, send me the shopping agreement. Because if they're legitimate, they can come up with a shopping agreement. You know, they probably know business affairs, have worked at studios that have business affairs, have done shopping agreements before, you know, so. Oh yeah, I'll put it up there. You can email me, call me. I'm happy to be helpful. And if you decide I'm not the right fit, I know other people too, right? Because that can happen sometimes. Yes. Clarify what exactly that I do and get. You sound like my husband. What is it that you do, or his family? So, yeah. So I'm a weird sort of amalgamation. So I was an agent in California. The word agent is highly regulated, so I cannot call myself an agent, right? But I was an agent. However, as an attorney, I'm still the bar of California supervises what I do and can and cannot do. So what I do is I do a lot of books to film and TV. So I am really bad at reading things. Oftentimes I will have friends and clients who will get an inquiry, and then I will go about negotiating that deal for them or redlining and papering the deal for them as they move through that space. A lot of people come to me that way when somebody actually reaches out about their material. I do have some clients that I've worked with for a long time that I actively submit their materials to different producers and studios and streamers to try to set up their projects. Oh, I have a minute and a half. I also do a lot of work with book authors as far as translation rights, foreign rights, publishing deals, paperback distribution. I have yet to meet an attorney that is similar, because I have a background as an author, both traditional and indie, and I have a background as a motion picture literary agent, and then also worked in books to film as an agent, and now have an entertainment law practice. So when you meet that person that has it, will you send them my way? Because I would love, so a little bit of everything.
And just one follow-up.
Yeah.
So can people in this group submit?
So, I always say yes, but with the caveat that I am really bad about reading things. I just am, and it's because, like, I went and spoke at a conference recently, and somebody said, who in this room has not read Lessons in Chemistry? Every hand, who has, and every hand went up, and I was sitting there, and I thought, oh shit, I haven't read that book, right? So I try to get back to people. I can tell you that I am. However, when I do read things, if I don't know who the buyer is, I will say to you, I don't know who the buyer is. That doesn't mean there isn't a buyer, I just don't know who it is. Now, I have had things happen where I'm like, I don't know who the buyer is, because I don't collect things, and I don't want somebody out there thinking I'm selling their stuff if I don't know, you know. I've read something, in fact, I have this happen a lot. I'll read something, and I'll be on the phone with a producer or an executive, and they'll be like, I'm looking for X. I'll be like, oh my God. And then I have to circle back to the author and say, are the rights still available? Because I just pitched your book. You know? Yes.
I keep getting email from Ink Tips.
Yeah.
Is that a scam?
Ink tips. I'd have to see it.
They come through, they say, a producer is looking for a one-location horror story.
I feel like I saw one of those recently. Are they maybe a book packager?
I don't know.
Or are they trying to do like a website?
They're only interested in screenplays, and they,
So do they want for you to pay to have your book adapted?
no, they just give you, these are the things that people are looking for,
Okay.
and you can write as part of
The time is up, by the way, if you guys want to, I'm sorry, you're released. I don't want to hold you, I know, but I don't know, I'd have to see it. How's that? I was going to give you a market report. Here's all my stuff. You guys are welcome to reach out anytime. If I can be of service or helpful, please do not hesitate. Thank you. Again, this was a little bumpy ride because I've never given this one before, but I really appreciate it.